Hello and welcome to The Coming Conflict on March 13th, 2023. My name is Tom, of course, and oh boy, are things popping off. We have bank failures, crypto crises, and a whole lot of bankruptcies that I'm predicting are to be coming within this coming week. First, I'd like to start off by saying, how are you guys? I want to thank you all that are subscribed and ask anybody else who's watching this video and enjoys it to please subscribe. Leave me a rumble or a like on YouTube. I'd prefer you to be watching me on Rumble. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Follow me on any of the social medias down below. And get in touch with me. Communicate with me. That's the whole reason I started this channel. I want to create a community of people that can just bounce ideas off each other. This isn't some big, I plan to be famous thing. I just can only talk to the same people about the same stuff for so long. So, at this point, I'm sure all you people out there are smart and you know what's going on with Silicon Valley Bank. So I'm not going to get into all of that. I was initially going to make this video on Thursday, and I had these tabs opened up, and I was going to talk about how everything is coming apart at the seams for the regime. We have the Twitter files, Taibbi and Schellenberger in front of Congress. Okay, we have Robert Redfield, the old CDC director when the pandemic started, throwing everybody under the bus. We have Biden with this crazy budget that's never going to be passed. That's absolutely insane. That's going to almost double our debt, national debt in 10 years. We have the Chevron CEO warning this transition to the Green New Deal is going to be painful and chaotic. What that means is absolute disaster, destroy everybody's lives. And then I was going to get into the banking. Silvergate collapse, Credit Suisse delaying their SEC filing, and Silicon Valley Bank being down 47%. But what happened on Friday was Silicon Valley Bank failed. Remember how I just said 2 seconds ago how Credit Suisse delayed their SEC filing? Okay, this was on Thursday. They delayed their SEC filing. Well, you know who else who did that about a week ago? That was Silicon Valley Bank. And then on Friday, they absolutely collapsed. So I'm not going to rehash all that. I'm kind of actually happy that I was able to delay making this video, because now we have a lot of things happening all at once. I'm not going to rehash and get into why the bank failed. If you want that, I recommend I recommend watching The Economic Ninja with Dan from iAllegedly. They did a podcast on this yesterday. They got into it in very good detail, along with Nobody's special financing. But basically, it was an overexposure to U.S. Treasuries. The interest rates are going up. The Fed's hiking interest rates, I should say. And yeah, it's breaking things, and this is the first thing to break. So we'll start with the bottom end of the scale, and I'm going to get into why this is important to you, even if you've never heard of this bank. If you're too young to remember the Lehman Brothers, if you're too young to have lived through 2008 like I did, I actually had the misfortune of coming into the job market right after the great financial crisis. So hopefully this isn't the third great crisis I have to live through in my life, just as things are going, relatively normally. But one of the companies that banked with Silicon Valley Bank was was Circle, and they are the company that is behind the USDC, the US dollar stable coin. They had something like $3 billion or $6 billion in the bank, some huge amount. I'm not gonna pretend to remember the numbers. It's just been too much information flowing in. So they've lost their peg. So it's in the crypto market. That's spreading because a stable coin, if you don't know, $1 worth of USDC is worth $1 American. But as of right now, last I checked, it was like 94 cents USDC to $1 American. This is the point of making this video, and I have all these tabs set up, and I think I'm going to go off the cuff here a little bit. This is the point I want to make this video for, is if you're watching this right now and you're like, I don't trade stocks, I'm not an economist, I'm not in the financial markets, I'm just a normal guy who gets up and I go to work, and maybe I'm interested in politics, but I don't work in Silicon Valley. This, to me, seems like it's the starting gun. It's the starting gun for the regime seeing that everything is collapsing around it and using one of their big guns to rein everything in. Because there's a couple questions we need to ask. Let's operate under the assumption that this is happening for diabolical reasons, which I think it is. If it's happening for diabolical reasons, why would they do Silicon Valley Bank? The bank that is the tech sector's bank, the tech sector being one of the biggest lobbying groups to Washington, D.C. Maybe it's because the federal government can no longer afford for the Federal Reserve to keep hiking interest rates because it makes it harder for them to borrow money. So what better way to get the Fed to pivot and start lowering interest rates than to affect the most powerful lobbying group in Washington and making them come and demand that the government do something about it. Now, what is that something going to be? Well, because I think it's called the Dodd-Frank Act after 2008, banks are no longer able to be bailed out by the taxpayer. So generally what happens is they get bailed in. What that means is when a bank collapses, they take all of their depositors' money to make themselves whole as much as possible. In this situation, at the close of the bell, right before when the bank closed, Silicon Valley Bank closed, they were $1 billion in the negative because the bank run had already started and they 25% of customers got their money out, which left them $1 billion negative because banks don't need to have all the cash on hand that they say they have in deposits. So let's say the FDIC says this bank needs to be made whole, but the FDIC doesn't have enough money to do it. The federal government's not allowed to bail them out. What I think is going to happen is these Silicon Valley types are going to march to Washington and they're going to say, this is a national security threat. Why? Because this is tech innovation. If we allow Silicon Valley Bank to go down, we are going to lose our competitive edge to China. The government needs to do something. Well, by law, they can't do something. And there's also another little sticky situation they have is the debt ceiling. So there's a few outcomes I can see. Either A, the Fed pivots, lowers rates. That allows more quantitative easing, meaning the Fed buying up assets, and it also allows money, 0% interest loans to these tech firms, which is how they've gotten so big to begin with. They pretty much need this 0% interest rate structure in order to continue to survive. There's that outcome. Or the second outcome, which I just said, they go to Congress and they say, you need to write a bill to make this whole and fund the Silicon Valley Bank because it's national security. There's that option. But where that option becomes tricky is we have the debt ceiling. The government can't spend any more money right now. They're up against the debt ceiling. The Treasury doesn't have the money to spend. So we know that the House is very divided right now. And let's say that the House says, no, we're not going to do it. Okay, they're not going to do it. We are not going to reward these Silicon Valley billionaires and millionaires for bad decisions, bad banking practices, and then screw all of the normal people. We're not doing this repeat of 2008. So maybe what they do is they say, okay, well, being as we cannot provide you with traditional finance, traditional money, what we can do is give you digital certificates that you can then pass out to your employers, your debtors, anybody you're doing business with. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve or the Secretary, the Treasury, talking to Silicon Valley Bank. So if you have any of these coupons, basically that they're giving out for anybody that had more than $250,000 in deposit at this bank, Well, what we can do is we can make these into like a digital certificate. You can use it. It can be accepted. Maybe we can use the Visa network or the MasterCard network. We can basically make this like an IOU. You guys can use this money. And then when we get everything figured out, we'll make the businesses and the people that are holding these IOU notes whole. Well, what is that? That is a CBDC. It's exactly what it is. Using the networks that already exist, Visa, MasterCard, whatever. It's just another way to backdoor this into Silicon Valley, San Francisco, California, the bluest place in the country. That's A. B, into the tech world, which, again, super blue, super liberal, totally in bed with the Democrats, the most powerful lobbying sector in Washington, and also the sector outside of the banking sector that would stand to gain most from this crisis. I hope what I am saying is wrong, but something is fishy. And those are my three things I'm thinking. It's either a way to get the Fed to lower rates and make money cheap again, or it's a way to get the federal government to write a bill to fund them, even though they don't have the money. Or it also could be a way to make sure the debt ceiling gets increased. Or it could be a way to backdoor in CBDCs in one of the wealthiest, most influential, deeply blue Democratic areas in the country. And I'm leaning towards that latter one. I've heard a lot of people with a lot of good opinions. I listened to Mike at Rethinking the Dollar today. Again, usually every Wednesday with him and Andre. Make sure you go subscribe to Rethinking the Dollar on YouTube. And he had some pretty good takes, so I would recommend watching that live stream. And there's something else I want to leave you guys with, is this list. If I can find it. I don't have it. There's a list of my computer restarted. I don't have the list anymore. But there's a list of 10 banks, like smaller regional banks that are going to be affected by this. And yeah, I would be very careful. Look this up. It's Market Watch. They have the top 10 banks that are probably most ready to go under next. And keep that in mind. Make sure you have cash. I am not giving you financial advice, just covering my ASS, but make sure you have cash on hand. If you can buy gold and silver, do it. If you lose 4% of your money on premiums, transaction fees, then reselling the metal if you need it, it's better than the inflationary situation we're in, and it's much better than being left with nothing in the bank. Make sure you have food. You know, if you could have 3 months of food on hand per person in your family, that's great. It's almost a necessity nowadays. I hope that this wakes people up to just how precarious our system is. Okay. And I also hope that this is a starting pistol for everybody to realize that we should really stop trusting these people. Because that's where we're in. I've said this before. We're in this era of zero to no trust. And on one hand, I want everybody to wake up and see these people have nothing but ill will and contempt for us. We are the great unwashed. But at the same time, I recognize how much damage and just turmoil that's going to cause to people. So it's a strange position to be in, where on one hand, I hope beyond everything that this could be the start of a great cleansing of this corruption and this terrible system we live in. But then on the other hand, I recognize that these sociopaths, our sociopathic overlords, are probably already a few steps ahead of us. And if there is going to be such a cleansing, it's going to be on their terms, and it's going to come out in their own way. That's why it's probably really important that each and every one of us become ungovernable as much as possible. So when this cleansing happens, we can have the upper hand instead of the banks this time. We can take control of land. We can take control of assets. We can take control of resources because we have money, we have gold, we have silver. We can do things that these people cannot do. We can change oil in a car. We can chop down wood. We can start a fire. We can do things that mean something to you as a human, but mean nothing in this financialized hellscape dystopia that we're living in. So that's what I wanted to say to you today. And like I said, just be prepared. Be prepared. Just assume something's going to go wrong. I am not giving anybody advice. I'm not recommending anybody go and drain their bank of all of its cash and put it under your pillow. I'm just saying, make sure you have enough cash to get through. Make sure you have some other form of savings besides money in the bank. Make sure you have food. Do those things and you'll sleep better, and none of this should matter to you. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching. In the information war, knowledge is power. Awareness is victory. God bless. I will talk to you guys next time. Remember, like, share, subscribe, spread it. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great night.